Step 5, moving right along. We are going to balance sheet. So you go to TFS, select step 5, balance sheet, and this is where you're going to enter in your data for each fund. Okay, the first thing that I do, or I did as a clerk, is I print my balance sheet report for general fund. And I suggest going down by the funds in order. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I always started with general fund and then just move through each fund, but you can flip around if you'd like. On here, you'll see that it's broken up into 5 different categories. You've got assets and other debits, deferred outflows, liabilities, deferred inflows, and fund balance equity. If you select your balance sheet report and you print it, this is what you'll see. It gives you your 2021 values, and then as you can see, your 2022 values aren't filled in because we haven't done that yet. But you can see it's also broken up into your assets and other debits, just like it was in that previous slide. You want to go back to that one where it says assets and other debits, and then you go to your balance sheet, next slide, and you can see where it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In here, we just kind of have in the red square there, you have, right, those are assets and other debits composed of those. Also on your balance sheet balance sheet instructions, it goes through and it'll explain what those are comprised of.
So Andrea, as they work through this, can they have their TFS instructions right there so that they can follow through on everything that they're seeing in order?
Correct. Okay, where are we? It'll show taxes receivables is out there. And that just goes through, and again, here it just explains what comprises or what is what you need to record all of those in your balance sheet. And the same here. Okay. This one shows your deferred outflows. And the next slide is your, again, it explains what your deferred outflows are. And liabilities are made up of these 4. And then if you go to the next slide, your balance sheet, it also, your liabilities are explained there as well. And last but not least, or actually we're not there yet, deferred inflows. And on the balance sheet, it tells you what makes up those. And then we go to fund balance and equity. You have 38 and 46, and the next one explains what makes up those. Revenues. Now we're on to step 6, revenues. Are we halfway there yet? Almost. Okay, to go into revenues, you go to TFS and select step 6, revenues, and you're going to go in again, just like you did with your expenditures. You're going to go in and you're going to start doing revenues. Okay, and again, I always started with Fund 01 and then just kind of go through that, but you don't have to necessarily do that. I do want to point out a couple of things on here. If you look down at your revenues, you'll have some that are already populated and it says calculated yes. Those are the ones that are tied into what your pre-filled. Yeah. So all of those should show up just like they are on your pre-filled. The ones that say that aren't calculated, those are the ones that you have to enter in.
So to enter them, there's a select button there. And the other important part of this one is that smaller districts may only have one page, but larger districts, you may have multiple pages. You'll want to make sure that you're looking at all of the pages in MAEFAIRS.
Yes. So what you want to do is when you enter one in, you'll go down, you're in your general fund or whatever fund, and then you hit the down arrow on the revenue code, and you're going to enter in, for example, 1111, your district levy real property, and you'll enter in however much you brought in over the year. And then you want to be sure to save it. If you don't, go to the next slide. For which ones?
So for revenues, a project reporter code is not required in some funds. But you may select a project reporter code if you want to keep track of revenues separately from others. So if you have, for example, 1900 local revenue, and you want to keep track of one source of revenue separately from another, you could assign them each a project report code.
It's not required in Fund 01, but if you want to track it, you can. Another way to enter in, you want to go to the, we kind of went over this. Be sure to hit select save once you put in your number. Okay, the other way that you can enter in revenues is you can, on the accounting subject area buttons, you can go down where it says other accounting resources, and you can do TFS revenue upload template. It has to be in this type of format. You have to have a valid LE. You have to have a current year. You have to have a fund code that's allowable, a sub fund, which you only need if when you're bringing in revenues from Fund 61. It has to have an allowable fund code or revenue code, sorry. And it has to have a project reporter code if you're using those, but you'll need them for Fund 15 as well. And the amount, you have to have an amount in there. It can't be vacant.
Even if it's zero.
Even as a zero. Okay.
I have a quick question for somebody. How where did they go to change their board of trustees chairman's name on the TFS report?
Let's put that in the parking lot. We'll come back to that one.
Okay. You can upload revenues either by fund or you can do by multiple funds. When you do a single fund, it will only overwrite or it will only come into that one fund. The thing that you have to remember about this is if you've already put numbers in there, if you've entered numbers in there, it's going to overwrite the numbers that you put in there. It's not going to overwrite the calculated entitlements that are in there that are selected, or you'll see them as calculated. They'll say yes. It will not overwrite those. It'll only overwrite the ones that you put in there. If you bring in revenues and you don't select a fund, it's going to overwrite all the funds. So just keep track of what you're doing. That's my only advice. Keep track of what you're doing and make sure that you're doing it one fund at a time. I made that mistake as a clerk once, entered in a bunch of stuff and brought in the funds, and it wrote over everything. I had to start all over again.
Right, so if you have, for example, if you hand enter your transportation fund and you want to upload general fund, make sure that you have general fund selected, because that will allow you to write only to general fund. If you hand enter your transportation fund and then attempt to enter or upload your general fund without a file selected, it will overwrite what you hand entered in transportation.
Yes. Okay. And sometimes as you bring in these, as you upload your revenue funds, it'll give you an error message. You have to correct those error messages before you can bring in that fund. I had one, I can't remember, but it was missing a 1, and it had only brought it in as like a 0-1, and it said that it wasn't correct. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you'll just get an error message that says you've got to fix that before you can move forward.